We're going to swing round. We're going to get some big introductions as we come onto this. We've got a special guest for a special episode today as we run through one of our new products and some early success as we run through, but also just that broader challenge that we are facing, probably the single biggest operational challenge for recruitment teams right now, which is application overload, real challenges with relevancy, real challenges with trust on the effectiveness and reference of a CV or a resume as you're receiving them into your ATS, and then the operational strain that's placing on recruiters and a knock-on impact on candidate experience. So a big topic that we've got to cover. I'm going to be talking about how we're addressing that with artificial intelligence. Surprise, surprise. And when we're talking on a webinar, of course, AI is going to feature. And there we go. First comment of the day. Welcome, Sita. So I'm Sam, VP of Talent Solutions here at hackajob. I also host this podcast / LinkedIn Live. So I'm sure you're used to seeing me. And I'll kick it over to Mark on our side.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Mark. I am the co-founder and CEO at hackajob, and very, very excited to talk through some of the things that we're hearing from customers and go more into our product release that we announced a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, fantastic. And then Johnny, over to you, sir.
Hey everyone, I'm Johnny. I'm Global Head of Talent Acquisition at Version 1. Been here for about 3 years and looking forward to talking about some of our stories and journey so far this year.
Magic. And it's always amazing when you start to see employers that are actively doing things in this space and starting to see results. So for people that are hearing stuff in the echo chamber and maybe not seeing results on the other side, definitely stick around, tune in, listen to what Johnny and the team are doing. Awesome story. But before that, I think, just to, I suppose, reset the scene of what's happening. We kind of talked about some of those pressures on talent acquisition. I don't know, Mark, if you want to build on, what we're seeing, where we saw this direction from your side.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the most fun part of my job is the amount of time I get to spend with TA leaders, whether they be customers or just people within the industry. And what's been really interesting over this last probably 2 to 3 year period is that the challenges that we hear from TA leaders are fundamentally different today than what they were historically. If we go back to, 5-6 years ago, we were operating in a very supply constrained market, where there was huge demand, and it was all around how do we find ways to engage with more candidates. Without a shadow of a doubt, the number one challenge I hear from customers today is my team is completely overwhelmed with mostly irrelevant applications. And that is creating a big administrative burden. I think also something we don't speak enough about is it creates a really poor recruiter experience. I don't think anybody got into the world of TA to sift through hundreds and hundreds of applications, on ATSs that don't actually load, which was a hilarious little anecdote that we can get into for one of our customers recently. And I think the challenging thing is that it means that TA teams are being forced to take shortcuts. And rather than optimizing for are we making sure we're getting the best candidate in the role? Are we making sure we're giving everybody a really great experience? Instead, we're in this scenario where actually we're having to, take shortcuts, try and hack around systems to try and find the most relevant candidates as quickly as possible. But doing that when we've got this bigger burden on us as TA leaders. And so it's clearly is a big challenge. And one of our kind of central thesis at hackajob is that the underlying data that we use in order to solve this challenge needs to change. We know the job description and the CV or resume are not the best primary inputs. And actually, how can we leverage AI? How can we leverage agents to do a much better job of really understanding what is the actual requirement for this role, not a list of keywords on a job description, and actually what is the candidate's actual strengths, again, not a list of keywords in a CV. And so really excited to get into that in more detail today and kind of share more about how we're thinking about solving that problem with tech, and also hearing how Johnny's approaching that at Version 1.
Yeah. And I think just to double down on that point, I think the challenge that we're facing right now is quality of slate, which was a phrase that, colleague over in Ford shared with me around how they're thinking about quality of hire. It's what's your initial setup of candidates? How are you building your shortlist? What are the sources that you're going from? And if you are overburdened and relying on just candidates that have seen your job description or candidates that have used tools in order to apply for jobs on your position? Are you seeing the whole market? The answer is no. And if you're not seeing the whole market, how can you be assured that you're driving the best quality? And I think that dovetails really nicely into like version one, an organization that's output is driven directly by people in an incredibly competitive technology market. Johnny, we'd love to give you like the floor here, a little bit of flavor, a little bit of background of, I suppose, version one for people who aren't familiar, and then kind of your journey into this.
Yeah, thanks. So for anyone that doesn't know, version one, we're 3,500 people globally. We're a digital transformation consultancy. We've got offices in Bangalore in India, all across the UK, Ireland, Spain, and now New York as well is a new geography for us. I think as a business, we are totally reliant on finding the best people in the industry to come and work on the projects that we're doing on behalf of our customers. And yeah, as a TA team, like most TA teams in consultancies, we're very reactive and we have to very quickly find the right people at the right time. And yeah, we're as a business now looking at AI as a solution, how we can help that both internally as well as sort of taking AI to our customers. Yeah, so we've been looking at AI on how we can better our process as a recruitment team, and get the best candidates at the best time, in the most efficient way.
Yeah. And I think it comes like it's a cultural thing at version one, right? You are also delivering these services into customers. It feels like there's a really nice foundation and surroundings for you to try and experiment and look at different ways of doing things. Love to kind of, share a bit more on that front.
Yeah. So, I literally just came off a call about this because we're coming to the end of our Q3. And for the last 2 quarters, everyone in the business has been targeted to do our internal AI training that was established by our CTO, Brad Mallard. So everyone in the business is being encouraged or, in many cases now targeted to learn about AI and start thinking about that either for us internally or for our customers to take it to our customers. So yeah, it's literally in sort of every day-to-day conversation at this point within version one of how can we utilize AI? What can we do to skill ourselves up in this area as well? Because, it's so new and things are evolving and things are changing so quickly that we constantly need to be on our game when it comes to AI. Yeah.
And I think that internal culture piece is like fascinating. But I don't think that needs to be a prerequisite, right? There are obviously lots of organizations right now that are going out and saying, look, you cannot ask for new headcount unless you've shown that we can't do this in this way. Like big, front newspaper style stories of maybe the over index in the culture and shift to AI automation. There's obviously lots of organizations that are having it as part of their prerequisites within a job interview process. Like how are you leveraging it? How are you using it to support you on a daily basis? What's your familiarity? There's then this scenario where you built this culture around training, learning, adoption, engagement, but we're all using it every day, whether we're choosing to or not, regardless of which platform we're using. I suppose it's like, how can you be intentional around the challenge that you're looking to solve and not just using something for something's sake? And so I suppose would love to think about in the context of like the challenge of finding quality candidates, how you've kind of chosen some of those problems and then how you kind of solve some of those like intentionally.
Yeah, wicked. Just before I do that, I went to a breakfast meeting a couple of weeks ago with a bunch of really senior people from JAR, big consultancies like Deloitte, PwC, as well as big tech companies. And it was really interesting because no one seems to have it completely figured out. And actually AI is one of the people around the table gave a really good analogy in that AI is the same as kind of talking about sex when you're a teenager. Everyone's talking about it as if they're doing it loads, but they're probably not, which I thought was an absolutely hilarious anecdote. Yeah, look, for us, how we sort of started on our AI journey as a TA team, we looked at our data across the recruitment journey, across our workflow. Basically, what we saw was that we've got a bottleneck at the very top of our recruitment funnel because we get too many applicants, right? And it's taking our recruiters, and we've got a team of about 20 recruiters globally. It's taking us a long time. It's a lot of effort going through hundreds of CVs. In some cases, we'll put an advert open and have 1,000 applicants within 2 or 3 days. What that means for us is that not only are we not very efficient as a business, as a TA team getting through those applicants, but normally what happens is we'll scan through the first sort of 200 of those 1,000. We'll pick the best, we'll screen the best of those, and then we'll send them over for interview. And it tended to be that 800 candidates, if you were candidate 201, you might not get seen by the TA team, purely because we're under so much pressure to deliver such quick hiring. And we simply just didn't have time. We ran out of time to screen all of those CVs. So that was a huge bottleneck, and ultimately means that we could be missing out. Candidate 201 could be the absolute ideal candidate that is perfect for us in every way, and we haven't seen them. So, the only way, if we were thinking about this sort of 5 years ago, ways around that in doubling the size of the TA team potentially, but that's not a feasible or realistic sort of outcome of where we're sitting today. Our first sort of port of call was, what can we do using AI to help us with this part of the journey and help us with that bottleneck?
And I think those sort of numbers are scary, but really familiar across the board. And it's this big challenge on candidate experience, right? Candidates are rightly getting really frustrated right now because they don't feel that they're being reviewed or they're being misreviewed. And I think that's then, how can you empower recruiters to be able to cover more ground? And then equally look for candidates outside of that initial segment who have applied, and look at your internal pool, look at other external pools, look at doing events, looking at actually meeting people. There's tons and tons of other routes that you can obviously go down to do it. And like, when you think about what's it meant for the team, like what's been the impact on the team of, I suppose, like solving that for AI? Firstly, how have you solved it? Not too much of a subtle plug for us. Job webinar today, but like, firstly, like part of solving that problem, but then also like knock-on impact on the team.
Yeah. So the story kind of goes that I met a few of hackajob team at Wreckfest, I think it was, and kind of explained that we've got this problem because we use hackajob all the time with hackajob intelligence. And, many of our roles have been successful in getting sort of 50% less candidates and having like a higher progression of sort of 90% progression rate of our candidates using hackajob intelligence. But there are a lot of roles where we can't use that, right? I sort of explained that to Vic and Jazz and a couple of others that were at Wreckfest, and they talked to me about Athena, which was really cool. So basically, what we were looking for or interested in trialing is an AI tool that can help us match candidates against either a job description or sort of a tailored search. We use our ATS system, looking at all the candidates that have applied that sit in our ATS system against that job, and helping us figure out who should we prioritize and who should we talk to first. Ultimately, that has meant that candidate 201 has a much better shot of being looked at, right? So it's helped us as a team because we're now able to prioritize the best candidates. There's still a human in the loop. So the recruiter is still responsible of making sure that those candidates are right and that we're still doing a sift through lots of the candidates far more quicker, far more efficiently. And that then means that we're then able to use some of the other tools that we've got because we've got more time back. We're progressing the best candidates that have applied, but now we've got more time to headhunt as well using some of our other tools. And basically it's meaning that we've only been using it for a short time, but we're already seeing that we're getting a higher quality of candidate that is successful, that gets the job. And we are being more efficient as a team. And it means that we can spend more time speaking to the candidate and giving the candidate a better journey rather than being a CV sifting machine ourselves. So it really just means that we can focus on quality, and we're seeing really good results because of it. Have I plugged?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. I think you nailed it. But but that's the most important thing. And I think when we're thinking about the candidate interplay there, like your point of like they have a much better chance of being seen. Like there's going to be mistakes made along the way, right? There's going to be like optimization of process. It's not going to be perfect, but you're going to be striving for that perfection. Generally speaking, and I think I can speak for employers as a whole, we're trying to make the candidate experience as positive as possible in the environment that we're in, regardless of your industry, the shape and size of your team, other things that might be happening inside your organization, mergers, demergers, a whole plethora of issues which maybe the candidate doesn't see on their side. The goal is always to provide that best-in-class experience, and that best-in-class experience has been challenged by candidates leveraging AI, one-click apply, by a slightly more buoyant labor market, by increased financial pressures, etc. And then that knock-on impact is there. But actually, can we free up humans? And it's not just in the case of recruitment, it's just in general, as we're facing more volume on one side, in whichever spate of life that we're in. I get about 4,000 promotional emails a week from everything I signed up to get 10% off on my first purchase. And it's now beautifully summarized for me. And it says most of these are not useful for you right now, but this one, because of X, is. So, it enables all of us, whether it's kind of personal, professional, to whittle things down. And it's about having that control of the process, which I think is critical. And I think, a big part when we were thinking about how to set this up, Mark, I think in that calibration piece, which may be good for you to touch on.
Yeah, I think a few of the things that Johnny hit on really resonate with how we're thinking about designing AI systems. I think ideally the systems need to improve the experience for the recruiter, the candidate, and the hiring manager. And how do you achieve that holy trinity? And I think the recruiter experience is a really important part of that. This is not about leveraging AI to replace recruiters. This is about how do we leverage AI to then redeploy that time saved to some of those higher value activities, to Johnny's point around, maybe that enables us to do some more headhunting, that strategic business partnering. And I think that, if you think about the underlying technology and what's changed, you can now surface talent in a much more contextual way. And this isn't a critique of applicant tracking systems. Like a lot of the ATSs we get to partner with are brilliant systems, but the architecture is built in such a way that it is not meant for surfacing the most relevant talent in a really rich and contextual way. A lot of it is still keyword based. If it's any sorting at all, often it's actually just sorted by when people applied. And what we've been able to do is take some of those numbers that Johnny shared from hackajob intelligence, which is, our AI matching layer that has this knowledge graph of skills, that has any kind of plain text and natural language requirements and built-in recruiter intuition to calibrate roles in a much more intentional way, which then builds trust with recruiters. And I think that is such an important part of this. Is I think rightfully so, a lot of recruiters are very skeptical of the tools on the market that claim they're going to transform their lives. I was at HR Tech last week, and every product, claims the same kind of things. And so actually by designing it with the human in the loop, to Johnny's point, it means you're able to build that trust with the recruiter. And actually they're now really excited to go and review applications because they know they've got a much better mechanism to spotlight the top 10 candidates of the 500 that applied, regardless of when they actually applied, to make sure that they're, focusing on the most relevant candidates. And so I think that the nerd in me is excited by this because it's really a new kind of architecture that's enabling these results. But actually, bluntly, recruiters don't care that it's a new architecture that's enabling this. Recruiters care that I can do my job more efficiently than I could before and actually have a much bigger impact. Johnny, I think you were sharing some anecdotes before that I'm sure people would love to hear. And how does that impact not just the recruitment team, but actually the wider business and the impact that the business can go on and have, and especially in an organization like Version 1 that, gets to partner with so many other really, really cool companies out there.
Yeah, totally. So a big example that we've got as a business, some of the customers that we've worked with and some of the projects that we've delivered and are delivering. So one of which is with Chaffey, which is the Children and Family Support Service. We've worked with them for a number of years and actually recently built an AI agent that can help the caseworkers with writing emails and letters to the children or to the families, affected families, and means that the caseworkers can spend more time with the children rather than working on administrative tasks that take them 4 hours a day. Right. And I think that's really kind of a great example of keeping the human in the loop. right? And we have that in our TA team using AI like Vina, right? So we need now more than ever the recruiter to deliver a really good journey to the candidate, to give our stakeholders the best, the best experience possible, our hiring managers the best experience possible, and we can be more effective doing that because some of our time sifting through CVs has kind of taken away effectively. And it means that us as recruiters actually get to use our skill set of working with people, talking to people, reassuring, guiding, coaching people through what can be quite a stressful time in someone's life. It's finding a job. It's one of the top 5 most stressful things. We can actually spend more time doing that than sifting through 1,000 CVs. So ultimately, it means that we're just delivering a better service, and those candidates want to work for us more, right? Because they've gotten a better recruiter as a result, and they see that as, okay, I'm seeing version 1's culture. We are the shop window. Yeah, I just think taking away a lot of the administrative tasks, like the example of Kafkas, that caseworker gets to spend far more time with affected children than sending a letter. So that's really, by the way, just in case anyone's got any questions about that, I'm happy to answer any questions after this. But the human in the loop with those emails, we still check, the caseworker still checks through, still adds small minute details that they know from conversations, but with the children, the body of it, the bulk of that work is done. And the same goes for recruitment, right? We're still checking that the CVs are right, that the candidates we're putting forward are right, that we're screening them well, but the AI is doing a big bulk of that work, which is really cool.
Yeah. And it's under your guidance. And in the same way, like the parallels of the stories are just amazing. And it's like, actually, what do you want to do? You want to have a human connection. And if you're going to go and win those projects and you're going to do that transformation, well, you need great talent to do it. If you're going to need great talent, you're going to need to win great talent, especially market leading AI talent. And you're not going to be able to do that if you're hamstrung and you're borne down with administrative tasks. It's competitive. You want them to join. You want to be able to sell the dream. You want to be able to tell them about the story, the projects, etc., exactly like that project. And then when we boil it down to that human value, again, outside of talent acquisition, outside of recruitment, there's so many great stories. That's a fantastic one of like helping children actually have more time with caseworkers as opposed to less time. And I think it's that parallel. It doesn't mean somebody's being replaced. Actually, they're just doing more meaningful work. And that's, again, mirrored, we know from your team's grown this year in terms of recruiters. It's not shrunk, but you're doing this work in conjunction, right? It's concurrently impacting the quality of hire and then the quality of business impact. And then, society's impact in this case, which is a lovely round out the story. And we're seeing central government doing it, right? There was a great story yesterday with fraud, and they're going and recouping loads of lost money through fraud, where they just wouldn't have been able to process all of that before. And there's all of the stories around, people being able to see things with AI-enabled glasses. So I think there's like so many powerful use cases, but all of them are intentional. And this isn't just a case of adding something in where there isn't a problem because it's shiny, because it's going to save. And it's how we think about things when we're working with partners. It's actually, what's the challenge that you're looking to solve? Is there a use in this case? Yes. Is it a combination of different things that need to happen, internal and external hackajob? Potentially. Is it none of those things? Is it just a process point? Is it just because you're asking for a vice president of technology in a really rural part of the UK and you're only paying 30 grand a year? That might be the root of the problem. All the AI in the world won't solve that. So I think, it's always about being intentional. And I suppose kind of closing thoughts from across, I think a lot of the stuff that we've covered, but a lot of this is centered on that triage of experiences. I think you called it the Holy Trinity, better than triage, Mark, like recruiter experience, hiring manager experience, candidate experience, but then also just the human experience and all the interactions we're having and how can we improve that as we go through. What would be the guidance as we close out for people thinking about being intentional with the application of AI, with the application of agentic workflows? I'll come to both of you. Mark, why don't we come to you first, actually, from like your perspective, and then Johnny will flip to you from an employer.
There's a few things I'd say in it, and it kind of touches on maybe what I shared earlier, which is it doesn't really matter what technology you're using to solve a problem. It matters that you identify whatever that problem is, and you have a solution in order to solve that. And there's a lot of marketing hype right now around agentic AI, and sometimes it is truly agentic AI. Sometimes it's just automation. Actually doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. What matters is, can we show that we are solving business impact? And actually, remembering our job as TA is, yes, to hire people, but it's hire the best people that can have the biggest impact and drive those business outcomes. And actually, when we think about the impact of TA, it's how do we drive business outcomes? It's not just about reducing time to hire, reducing cost per hire. There's a great question in the chat around, bias and how do we think about that with AI? And I think that's another critical part when people are reflecting. I think, Sam, you've used the word intentional a lot today. And I think that's another thing that we have to be really intentional about. At hackajob, we run all of our own internal evals to ensure that there is no bias in any of the models that we're doing. And we've actually just went through like a very intense 9-month AI review with one of the tier 1 investment banks, and they were like blown away by the level of analysis that we've done internally on this stuff. So it's stuff that you have to take very, very seriously. And if you are in the market, you should really be challenging your vendors. Vendors should be very comfortable sharing their internal evals with you and showing, what of the measurements that they've done, to minimize bias. So I think I'll just come back to it is the most exciting time I have ever been involved in TA Tech, without a shadow of a doubt. But it's easy to focus on the hypey, bubbly stuff, and actually bringing it back to what is the business problem we have right now, and what is the best product to solve that problem, to maximize the holy trinity of recruiter experience, candidate experience, and hiring manager experience, and drive those business outcomes.
And before I flip to you, Johnny, it would be remiss of me as a host if I didn't bring this question up, because it was just on bias, and I think you've covered it in good detail there. But I don't know if you want to add anything here for Daria's question.
So I think I touched on it right, but I think that I would be challenging vendors to be releasing their evals with you when you're going through any type of procurement process, and just really being rigorous around that part of the funnel. We're very fortunate because we have a lot of first party data. We're able to do very, very detailed analysis on different demographics, whether that be gender, ethnicity, or diversity, and ensure that there is no negative impacts that is happening from the models that we're using and the products that we're building. And I think Johnny hit on this as well. Having a human in the loop is also a really powerful part of that, right? We're not at the stage where I believe we should be doing automated decision making in recruiting. To Johnny's point, recruiting is one of the most stressful parts of people's lives, and people deserve to have a fair and equal opportunity to get the role. So I think it's much more about how we're leveraging AI to enable our recruiters than it is about, kind of replacing that decision-making ability and that kind of autonomy to take those decisions.
Yeah. And there's been another question in on that same point, just building on it. And I think you've kind of touched on that as well, of that human in that loop, that constant fine tuning of the process and understanding of what you're looking for, because recruitment is a process as well, right? The job description, very rarely tells the story. And often the first brief that you have doesn't always translate to exactly what the final candidate is going to look like as part of that process, because you might go back and forth with the hiring community. There might be changes, business objectives. You might be hiring a project team and somebody else has got really, really highly skilled in one of the areas that you're sourcing for. And it means that actually you lower the importance of that and you raise a gap that you might have across that squad, etc. So lots and lots of things can change as you go through the process, loads of variables to work with. And that's why human in the loop, that constant fine tuning is essential, not just from a bias perspective, but also from an output and quality perspective. Johnny, what would be your guidance? Other employers, obviously you've got a nice culture around you, but maybe for some of the folks that don't have that, how did you think about the problem? What are some of the learnings? What would you share with others?
Yeah, for sure. The way I thought about it, and this was a few months ago, obviously starting this journey with you guys, is just looking at data across our workflow as a recruitment team. One thing that our ATS tracks really well is average number of days candidates spend in each part of the process, and that's kind of my initial go-to to see, right, is there a bottleneck somewhere and what can we do to straighten that out. So just using data, because it might be that someone else's another team's bottleneck is in interview scheduling, and candidates are spending 3 weeks in an interview process and it takes forever to get you interviews scheduled. So I would personally look at the data of your workflow as a recruitment team and think about where your bottlenecks are and what you might need to help you through that, and then explore. It just so happens that I spoke to you guys at RecFest. It's one of those things. The more people you speak to in the industry, the more you learn about what tools are available, what's out there, what can help you. So yeah, data. Look at where your bottlenecks are, and I think Mark said it. Identify problems and look for solutions with tools.
Yeah, and there's a certain level of trust there as well from the recruiters, right? Having seen the matching engine themselves and then being able to play with it in a similar way is like another really important part. And I think that's where candidates should feel that confidence, employers should feel that confidence when they're like building into processes. Lou Adler, true to form, has got an unbelievable set of questions there, which I don't think we'll have time for, but I'd love to come back to. But it's like the 10 key findings of elite performers and top hiring, and how we can play into that. So Lou, obviously we've had you on the show before. Maybe we need another episode for that one because there is a lot to cover, but I'm going to bring this one up from Jose, just from it looks more like a candidate perspective. I might have got this wrong, but yeah, I think this is a cool perspective and one to maybe throw out to close as we think about the candidate in the mix.
Yeah, and actually I saw a great post on this, a very similar topic yesterday on LinkedIn. You can find great content on LinkedIn despite all the madness on there.
Yeah, here we are, Mark.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And it was kind of really leaning into what Jose's saying here. Maybe it was Jose that shared this yesterday, which is, interviewing is a skill, and it is absolutely a skill that you can develop and get better at. And yes, we predominantly operate in the world of tech, but that's not an excuse. And I think that absolutely people should be practicing interviews. Jose talks about expressing himself, clearly and confidently. That's such an important part of interviewing. And, what's really interesting, if we bring it back to the topic of AI, is we're predominantly today seeing AI impact top of the funnel stuff, right? Whether it be sifting, whether it be a lot of content creation, etc. What is going to be really interesting, and it's a bunch of tools out there doing this already, is when we start getting into some of like the interview intelligence type stuff. And actually, do we end up in a world where AI can do a better job of predicting on the job success than humans can? Because maybe humans are naturally biased to people that can articulate themselves clearly and confidently in an interview process, and maybe that's got absolutely nothing to do with how well they would do the job. And so, I think Jose's point there around actually being clear and confident is key. I think that people should practice interviewing. I think that there's lots of good tools out there, including hackajob, where you can do that. I'm really excited to see as AI goes more and more down funnel, actually, how does that potentially, enhance that kind of candidate experience and decision making as well.
Yeah, and I think it's on organizations to design the right rubric in their interview process in order to identify people on skill and capability and ability in the role, as opposed to how somebody comes across in the interview. And great hiring manager training from places like Social Talent, and there's loads and loads of things that you can go to online so that recruiters can enable that. And guess what? As a lovely closing loop, if you have more time as a recruiter because you are not spending time doing admin, you can create a better experience, exactly like Johnny described, of coaching candidates through that process, finding people that otherwise wouldn't have been missed. And it could be at any stage of the funnel. So yeah, be intentional, leverage things in the right way, create a better human experience. So what about that for a bombshell moment to end on? Johnny, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Connect with Johnny, folks, if you haven't already. It's great to see TA leaders leveraging AI in a culture, a version 1 that enables that so that they can deliver the best results for customers. And in that instance, doing really impactful, meaningful work out in the community, which is what we're all here to do. So wonderful. Thank you for joining. That is the end of the show, folks.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.